Welcome in, folks. RFK Refugees podcast. Ted here, Jon here. The vibes are not great, folks. Not great.
I think they're actually awesome. I think everyone's really excited. I think the coaches are excited. I think the players are excited. I think the fans are rushing to get season tickets if they hadn't already gotten them. I think it's great. I don't know what you're talking about. I have to go. I'm going before when we go next weekend to the LAFC game, or this weekend. I'm going to a ticket presentation because I skipped last Wednesday. So they had like a lot more forward momentum before the New England game, talking about trying to sell people tickets. I think after the last two games, it'll be interesting. Like, well, these tickets are very affordable, and next season there's less games, so it's even more affordable. So you'd be foolish not to purchase them.
Jon, you're sporting a very, very nice looking jersey.
Thank you.
You bought that online, right? You weren't
as the true only Richmond Kickers fan of this podcast, as some of our closest fan listeners have often called me the liberal guy from Richmond. I felt it was important that I go to the game and support the team. I also didn't know you wouldn't be there. I went there with a friend. Yeah. I didn't tell you I was coming because I wanted to walk into the supporter section and just like enter the supporter section and start chanting next to you. And just to see what you would do, because I think that would be really funny. Unfortunately, you had other very reasonable plans this weekend, but you were not at the game. But I was. It was something.
Yeah, you got to see a team not lose. So that is a good thing.
My observation is the team tries a lot more stuff inside the attacking 18 than I would have thought for a team that has so little goals scored.
Yeah.
There were lots of like flicks. There were lots of sort of creative energy being attempted there. I was surprised about that. And the goal they conceded was kind of stupid, but I did also, I think the highlight that I'm sure everyone who's listening to this also had the two screens up and they were watching on ESPN, on ESPN Plus. But when Richmond scored the equalizer, what's the supporters group called? River City Army?
Yeah, the River City Red Army. Yeah.
River City Red Army held up a giant, white, sheet that said farts of pine instead of hearts of pine for the mayor. And I was like, I love it. It's perfect. This is exactly the kind of energy that I was expecting and hoping for. Ted's been saying this forever, but now that it's coming from me, I do recommend you guys go check it there. It is kind of interesting. It is very funny.
It is like classic Lot 8 RFK type experience. Like that's what it feels like.
I get the vibes. Beer. Good beer. The price is $28 to get in anywhere and sit anywhere. Was a little more than I was expecting. I did, however, not pay for parking because we got there late. So we went into the preferred lot and they just like park. I was like, sick. Excellent. That's what I'm talking about. Otherwise, based on those ticket prices, how much is the preferred parking if you are paying?
I honestly have no idea. I bet
it's like $60. I bet it's something insane.
I park right down to like there really is no reason to pay for parking. There's plenty of options if you come within a reasonable amount of time. But glad you came down. Glad you got to watch us. You've been to more games than I have been to this month. It's the stars have not aligned as far as me making it out to games. But I will. September's going to come around. I'll be around. So. But
now you and I will meet at Audi Field this weekend. So
we will.
We will. I'm just soccer gaming all over the place. That's what I'm doing.
We are.
Tell me about your weekend, your non-Richmond Kickers weekend.
It was with the folks. My dad's actual birthday was this weekend, so we spent some time in there. And then my present to him is the trip we are going to take this Saturday to watch DC play LA. A ticket I bought right after the TFC win, and I thought, oh man, here the vibe. Yeah, this will be a tough game. Maybe we lose, but like the vibes are feeling pretty good right now. Everything's feeling like it's trending in a somewhat upward direction. Maybe things will be okay. Boy, it's shifted. I mean, it's shifted very, very quickly. Let's get into it. Let's talk a little bit about these games. I don't know how much time we'll spend some time talking through these games. We'll spend some time talking, but I think the overall narrative, we come here as a voice for the fans, as a voice for you guys. That's why I solicit questions. That's why we want to hear what you guys have to say. We want to, regardless of whether we think you're annoying or not, we want to hear what you have to say. So we want to hear what the fans think. So
I don't think you're annoying. Ted thinks you're annoying. I don't ever think you're annoying.
I don't ever think you, of course,
any of you. Y'all are very cogent and making very calm and reasoned points.
But I think it's worth sort of assessing the mood of the fan base along with talking about the game and everything like that. And there's a lot I think that's going on. Most teams, even in a 1 win in 10, most teams do not have the sort of just the overall vibe shift. It felt like we were entering like, the Montreal game versus now. It's like, it's been very palpable how things kind of like started. And it's been piled on, and I'll get into a little bit of that and what I think about that. A lot of it, there's a lot of piling on from national media. It kind of tends to happen, and it is, there is a sense to me that it's a little eye-rollingly annoying in a certain sense, because it definitely feels like, now you want to start talking like that. I don't know.
I think they were all waiting for an opportunity to do it.
Yeah.
And
that's what it does feel like.
DC has been annoyingly fine for much of the year. They haven't been embarrassing. They haven't lost 7-1, and they've been waiting. They've been waiting to like unload both barrels, and this was Goff's opportunity to do so. Now we'll get into that, I guess, but they're not wrong. It's just it doesn't come off as entirely genuine because it's like I said, they've been waiting for a reason to bust out the big guns. Now they have. Well,
let's talk about the games. Let's talk about why we're here. Let's give the full context. Let's start. DC United 3-0 loss to New England at home. A Wednesday game coming off a Saturday game.
Timothy on our chat says they looked bad last Monday, but Saturday the wheels fell off after they conceded. Yeah. So it's a downward hill from the start of the game Wednesday to the end of the game in Charlotte.
I think the real overall question, if we want to speak genuinely about the game, is, was this a nature of the fact that the team had played 3 games in a week, the fact that they really didn't rotate? Go look at the subs that Charlotte brought in versus the subs that DC brought in. Is that the nature of the reason? The legs, everything like that. I think it had a role. I think there was a role in that, at least a little bit.
Now you're
Nono played what, full, like, basically full 3 matches?
Do that? Do you know who chose for him to do that?
Yeah, Renée Weiler.
The Renée Weiler is going to complain about the subs, in which he did in the Charlotte game. He said that was the difference of the subs, because he said, look at the players they brought on. And if you look at the transfer value of the players that got brought on, Lyle Abada obviously was a higher paid player. The other 2 subs are just some guys. They're one of them's an MLS super draft guy from college, Bronico. We brought on Nathan Ordaz, who is $2 million from a perspective of what we paid for him. So like, it's not like we brought on 3 academy players and that's why we lost. There was a change, but it wasn't necessarily down to Abada had a hand in one of the goals, but it was defensive breakdowns. It was the same thing. It was not the same. 2 of them were off of set pieces. One of them was off of a broken play. Similar to what happened in New England, where they were beaten 3 times on an identical look, which drives me so insane. And I don't watch enough other teams to the extent that I've watched this, but it feels like this team, once a flaw is exposed, we're going to see it 7 or 8 more times in the next couple of weeks. The teams are just like, that's it. And then we don't fix it, either because we can't. I mean, it's obviously identifiable. Clearly there's like something but to have the 3 goals get scored by Youssef, who scored against no one else, who scores a hat trick against us, is very frustrating to have it happen identically like that. And I think the fans, as far as what happened that game, DC Denver looked, I'm trying to remember, did they have I think in maybe the first 15 minutes of the first half, they had some looks. I'm trying to remember back. It's only been not close than a week, but
there were some moments. I think Nono had had one point where he forced a nice save. Obviously I think he had by the way, expected goals on target of 0.82. So I definitely recall him having one moment where he had a chance. He's been a player.
That was the play he dribbled into the box and looked like he wanted to square it a couple times, and there wasn't really opportunity, so then he shot it. Yeah, it was a good shot.
Yeah. I think also Ordaz had an opportunity where he nearly curled one in the back corner. Great save by Matt Turner. I think this was a game where DC, they lost on moments. They had 3 moments where they broke down, and they were unable to create any of those moments for themselves. If Nono gets the goal, if Ordaz's curler goes into the back of the net, we're looking at a 3-2 game and maybe not as embarrassing. Or maybe we're talking about some things. DC broke down at the worst moments. You talked about it, same play. Youssef just burned that left side. Kirikawa had, I think, one of his weakest games.
He is trending downward very quickly. A player that almost looks like he's a player who's played every single minute of every single game, except for maybe a few minutes on the side of it. The man needs to sit down for a little bit, and he can't.
I will say he looked a little better. It was a little bit of a bump against Charlotte. I thought he looked a little more clued in, despite the result. But yeah, overall, it's tough. don't want to say he's done, he's toast, but
No.
you know, he
needs some time to recover and breathe and not play 3 games in a week.
Yeah.
After playing 20 the rest of the games so far.
Yeah. So I think he'll bounce. I think we'll see him bounce back. I have no doubt that he can sort of show the form that he saw. Or at least I hope he can. You know, he was certainly strong in sort of that beginning half of the season. You know, Munteanu in that game, pretty quiet. Nono was maybe the only standout. Hopkins, again, it was kind of a similar thing we saw in Montreal, just like unable to really did some nice things in sort of the middle of the field, but then unable to really turn it in the final third. I think we did see the shift in Charlotte was a result, I think, of Sean Nealis and just how maybe poor he looked in this game.
Yeah.
So
that's not looked like a good bit of business so far. In his time here.
Yeah. Hasn't looked strong, hasn't looked sort of up for it, I guess you could say. And he's signed a new contract, so he is here through next year. So, I think it's more of a case of next season, maybe he's a spot type starter or a guy off the bench, not a week in, week out starter. I think the common denominator between these games is who was missing in the back line. And it was Kye Rowles. Kye Rowles still out injured. Hopefully he's back next week. I think that has been the main thing. If you have to point to one thing, some people have some opinions on Kye Rowles, and some of them say he's not as good as you think he is, or some people don't seem to think he is. I think there's an absolute reason why.
Watch by his absence every single time we miss him. Tracking runners is just it's over. We just don't do it.
Yeah. So hopefully he's back next week. But definitely been a missing piece on this roster. I think the biggest difference, and I think we'll get into this, maybe I'll get into this a little bit. Jack Harrison just absolutely torching, looking every bit worth the money that New England paid for him. It's a rough home game, a rough result. Definitely it was when the vibes started to turn. And then I think the Charlotte game was when the vibes completely just started to shift downward. Any other like moments, things you can think about from that game? I don't know. It was an average performance and they lost on moments. I don't know how much you can really talk about.
They lost on the same moment 3 times, which we've already mentioned, but I think it's certainly one of the more frustrating things. I'm trying to get the exact quote. I think the thing that has been in my craw, and I want to find the exact quotes because I don't want to misattribute them, but, Renée Weiler has his post-game press conference and talks about the game. And, I think generally his press conferences have been the thing that I have liked about him at the onset of this season is that he was very honest about sort of the shortcomings and how far this team needed to go. And at the time, at the beginning of the season, I found that to be endearing just from the perspective of being tired of, being peed on and told it's rain, like we've been here forever and we've seen it forever and we've just been told that it's just this far away. And then he stopped doing that and I appreciated it. But then at a certain point this year, I think it has turned into a bit of a crutch, a bit of a deflection. I've never heard him take responsibility for a bad game plan, for a poor substitute, for not changing the game the way he wants to. It's always deflected either to a player's individual performance if it's going negative, that they're not playing for the team, or it's been an excuse about the fact, look how far we are. We have a lot more to go. Here we go. Full quote. At the end, it has to be very well connected in our team. So I heard some frustrations from the fans, but I have to remind them that maybe they ask maybe too much. And I remember that some people told me that we had too many draws, and I told them, you're crazy because all games are so tight. And I repeated again where we are coming from. And today, of course, it wasn't the best game. But without any doubt, I repeat, the better team was the opponent and not DC United. So maybe we are on the way to becoming a really strong team. We are much better today than we were, but the way is a little bit longer than some people think. And maybe they should be more patient and more objective. I am not here to give the man media training or do the job of the comms office and try to maybe guide him away from at least that last sentence about being more patient and more objective. This fan base, for the most part, has been extremely patient. I mean, some people haven't been, but they have been, we've been waiting at the altar here for quite some time. And I think it's not crazy to expect the team to put up a fight against the Revs with the roster that they brought out, Jack Harrison aside. The guy who scored 3 on us is a player that could have been had by anybody at the start of the season. It's not like this was a big transfer. This was a big concern. The fact that the team just had no offensive threatening of this club and they look so defensively inept, I think warranted frustration. And I don't think it was. So when he cast New England Revolution as clearly the better team won today, clearly, and we are not there. We're nowhere near there. If you look at the roster, I don't necessarily think that it's that inherent. I don't think the Revs are Inter Miami. I don't think the Revs are Nashville or a whole bunch of other rosters if you look at this team. So I think that he is, I don't know if it's internal pressure. Maybe he doesn't feel pressure. Maybe he doesn't care. Like maybe that's not like a concern that he's thinking about. I would not point any of the frustration back towards the fans after that performance or just sort of where the team's at. I think, Ted, you may feel a little different.
I don't know if I feel necessarily different. I don't think I think someone needs to certainly inform him that, it's tough. It's tough to say, like, when you haven't been here. Like, this is, I think what fans are feeling right now is, I think you talk to people who maybe follow this team, who have followed this team all season, you would say that this team is better than they were last year. I think that's a doubt. They've had some misses. Niels is a miss. Nono looks good. Karakawa has some good moments, maybe a little bit of a struggles as this far. Baribo, certainly he's right up there in the Golden Boot race. Good signing. So I think you can look at, there have been some steps forward. I think the overall message to fans, and I get it, is like, how much more patient are you asking us to be? We'll get into it a little bit, maybe a little bit later. I want to maybe hold that for a little bit later, but no,
the conversation was 3 windows. And then we're there, and then 3 DPs, and that's what we're going to do. And that wasn't what happened, either of those things. Or at least one of them isn't for sure.
And I mean, let's just look, and this is where I'm getting into my biggest thing about this team, and my biggest frustration with this team is this window feels like an absolute missed opportunity. You were sitting there right in ninth. You were sitting in a playoff spot, and you knew you would have to be naive to think that there were going to be teams out. Everybody was going to stay pat. That everybody was gonna, that wasn't gonna try to make a move. Columbus Crew went and got a chance creating number 10. Somebody DC desperately needs somebody to create chances. Atlanta United broke the bank on a Swiss striker. Yeah, their signings haven't worked out, but they're breaking the bank to try to get better. Don't think Toronto FC has done anything too major. Philadelphia Union, again, was more nibbling around the edges, but Orlando went and grabbed.
Was Josh Sargent this window, or has he just been injured?
He was beginning of the season. He was okay. January window. But Orlando City went and got Anton Griezmann. The team we played in New England Revolution went and got Jack Harrison, a guy who can create chances. He had 2 assists in this game. He's a guy who can create chances. And that's what DC would so need somebody on that right side to do that. What DC has done this window, if you look at the roster, if you just look at like who left and who came in, the only player that's really been kind of a net gain as far as like where you're not like immediately comparing him to somebody who left is Andre Dozel. Nathan Ordaz is here because they wanted to jettison Gabriel Prani and they wanted to bring somebody in. And maybe Nathan Ordaz would be better than Gabriel Prani. Right now, Gabriel Prani has 2 goals. Nathan Ordaz doesn't have a goal. He has an assist. But that's about it. And again, he's not starting. So the question, and you're looking at an attack that's anemic and you're wondering why can't he get out there on the field and actually start a game? Kimito Nono looks good, but he's also making up for the fact that you got rid of Herrera.
Aaron Herrera.
Again, there is a little over a week to go. The interesting wrinkle about the summer window is that it will end a day after the European window closes. This has long been a complaint about MLS and how it operates, is that their window would always end too early. So this will be an interesting wrinkle. Maybe there is a player that they are talking to. I hope it's not Paul Pogba, but I don't know, man. Maybe I'd be open for that after watching some of these games. I don't know at this point.
I don't know, man. Don't put that out there.
I mean, maybe it's that bad. I don't know, man. Maybe it couldn't get worse than some of those offensive performances. But other teams have gone, maybe there is a player out there they are talking to, but they're like, I've got other European offers. If those fall through, then yeah, I'm on you. And you've got the extra day to do that. If this team, my next question to reading some of the quotes, and maybe we'll get to the quote after the Charlotte game. My next question to Renée Weiler is, do you think you have the rope that you think you do? Do you think you have the rope to survive this year if this team misses the playoffs? Do you? Because so far, if other coaches have met the, and maybe you do. I mean, come on. I mean, they held on to Lassane after his first season. They held on to Lasada after his first season when they didn't make the playoffs. So maybe you think you do, but I don't know, man. I mean, you're not going to get much rope after that. And, even the sprint season, which is going to be funky, got to feel like it's got to be a runaway success. Otherwise, I don't know.
I think he has rope because he is as advertised. I think that he has had a reputation of being plain and honest about what the team needs, and sometimes that rubs the team the wrong way. If ownership is surprised that he's saying the things that he's saying, then they're stupid, because he's done it every place he's been according to the sort of the news perception. I think he has the room because the expectations are elevated, but they're not. I don't think the spend has been high enough where the ramifications will be instant. If they had spent $40 million, if we had set transfer records,
we set DC transfer records for
but like, I think that they still understand that they're still playing in the baby pool for the most part when they do that. Like, it's not like these are not economically disastrous decision making that they've done. Louis could turn out that way. We don't really know, but he's already gotten he probably has more goals than Edison Flores probably. So
yeah, he's he had a goal
at 8 times the contract.
He had a goal against Charlotte, and let's get into that. Let's talk a little bit about that game.
Yeah.
We're gonna let's focus back in a little bit. But DC 3-1 loss to Charlotte. Started off well. Louis Munteanu with a goal. Ty Baribo on the bench for this game and did not come in. That might have been just rest. I do find it interesting. I would have to go look. I'm pretty sure most of Louis Munteanu's goals have come when Ty Baribo, or his positive play has come when Ty Baribo has not been on the field.
I think an analysis to do. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. It's 6 goals.
It would be awful if that's true, by the way. That would be very bad news because then you have your 2 best players who can't play together.
He has 6 goals and 1 assist right now. So I don't know, I don't think he's been disastrous. It's certainly been room to improve. So needs to find maybe a way to play with,
he's in trouble because this team has so few goal threats that when we need anyone that is a threat to just knock everyone's socks off. And that's hard to do. And then he's got the highest expectations due to transfer fee. So, but I would say from this game's perspective, the first half, if you missed it, you missed nothing. It was certainly sort of a continuation of a lack of attacking edge. We were not being opened up like a can opener the way we were against New England, but nonetheless, that we had an opportunity for that later in the game. Lewis's goal sort of set about the downfall, or very shortly after.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I've always kind of wondered about certain scenarios where you score a goal and then suddenly you kind of wake the team up, because that's kind of what it felt like. Was that the team?
The 1-0 lead is now the most dangerous lead in soccer on the road.
For DC, it's like almost like you woke them. Oh shoot, we got to actually go out there and play a little bit. Yeah, I mean the goal. Talk about the goal. It was a very nicely well taken goal. Peltola's ball sort of off the midfield line to Peglo. Very nice. He lays it off. Munteanu goes and finishes it nicely. Hits it low, hits it hard on turf. That's a good goal. On grass, that might be a save, but on turf, you play it well. It's a good goal. DC's up 1-0, and then basically they almost completely fall apart inside like 2 minutes. A free kick falls header to Johnson. Johnson makes the save, but it falls right to David Schnegg, who clears it away. 1-1. DC then does get an opportunity to maybe bring it back and make it 2-1. Jackson Hopkins right on the doorstep, has the ball, unable to really kind of drive it in. Where are we? You've been a Jackson Hopkins stan. Where are we after these last 3 games? Is it time to maybe put him on the bench, give Ordaz a run?
Yeah,
Certainly.
I think without a doubt, he has not staked a permanent claim to anything.
Yeah.
It's been a lack, and to the coach's perspective here, there's a lack of other options with which to put him on the bench for. But Ordaz is certainly a guy that I would like to give the next 3 or 4 games as many minutes as he can take, if he's fit enough now, since that was originally the reason why he wasn't. I'm sure he is by now.
Be curious to ask him. He probably won't give you the answer, but be curious to know where his fitness is and whether he thinks he's playing up against his former side in LAFC. Is this an opportunity to throw him out? Because DC will need attacking help in that game, certainly.
A quick aside, because just to put tie bow on it. Do you know how much New England paid for Jack Harrison?
How much?
$1 million. That was it.
Get out.
That's it.
He's not even a DP. That's wild.
He is a DP.
Oh, he is a DP. Okay.
So that is the big struggle if you think about taking him. But I mean, with a guy with a pedigree, with no real substantial injury history and a league, I would have probably done it. I could have taken that deal. Anyway, just wanted to make sure we're on that. Second half.
Yeah. Second half. Well, we got the second half. Obviously, Hopkins the goal. Then almost immediately off the corner kick. Again, this time it was Cleary who scored the goal. And then I think at that point also right before that, like that's where you talk about the subs where you have Labile Bada, Diani and Bronico sub in for Charlotte. And then they immediately get the goal. DC really then couldn't muster much of an attack. I think at this point this team is dead on their wheels. Peglo being maybe the only player out there who didn't play, a majority of the past two games. No, I went 75. He went, I think, of 90 on Wednesday, and certainly a lot more. So he looked very much muted in that second half. Hopkins again went 75. He played most of last week. Karakawa again went 90 again. So I think this was a case of a lot of players were dead on their feet in that second half, and that immediately leads to Pep Biel, I think, driving through the center of the field for the third goal, and by then it was lights out, we're done, move on. DC really didn't have much else to really offer.
What do you think about the man management philosophy here with the 3 games in a week? And I think none of these games from a roster perspective taking the dive maybe that you would need to get like my low level managing of adult baseball and other sports. Like if you look at games, you don't assume you're going to win all of them. And you take your opportunities to increase your probabilities where you can. And if there's a game where you're outmatched, like, all right, strategically, I'm going to kind of take a dive here and we'll see what happens, but I'm going to preserve my talent for the games that are winnable. He just was like, we're like, I'm not doing that. Like, I'm going to run my 11 into the ground, except for Ty, who I've given, that's like the one time ever, if he's not injured, it's like the first time ever this year, a good player has been given a game off to rest. Everything else has been like, sorry, you're going to play until you die. What do you think? Is maybe the LAFC game the game in which they do that? Are we going to witness sort of the send in the clowns game?
What I think it is, I think this reminds me so much of like 2018, 2019, like DC United, even 2017, even like as far as like Ben Olsen's philosophy for what we saw. There were like 12 to 13 guys, and it's a little bit more, I think, for Weiler that he trusted to be out there. And that was it. It was like he would use, this was the era when you only had 3. This was pre-COVID era when you only had 3 subs. It reminds me so much of that. It's like, rather than playing Markovic, giving him a start, seeing what he can do, you're going to play Dozel as your center back and play Peltl. And now I think it was let's see how it goes. And I think it went okay in the first half. So they kind of stuck with it.
Yeah.
But it was very much,
he looked fine in the first half. Dozel looked pretty decent in the first half there.
Yeah. So then it was Peltla, and then maybe we'll switch it up if it's not going well. And then it went fine, so they kept it. There is a lot of that. There is like, you would think, and I have to wonder, like, what is a guy like Markovic thinking? He's played well in the first part of the season. I think he's earned an opportunity. Over Nealis. I would much rather see him start and maybe struggle than see Nealis struggle, because we know Nealis is who he is and what he's going to do. So.
How many more years is he under contract? 2 more years? We gave him a fresh deal when he came over here.
Yeah, I think it's 2 more years. I'd have to go look. I think it is fairly significant as far as what we've offered him.
That was the rare Dave Casper inter-MLS miss. Ty Bariba, we got nails on. This one, I think New York sold us a tire, a car with a flat tire.
Yeah. Rich Myers says, since Markovic was a standout defender, AC Defensive Player of the Year, as well as a first-team All-American, why does Weiler insist on playing midfield at center back over him? It certainly doesn't seem to be working for me. Seems at least worth a shot, but he doesn't even get cleaned up minutes there. I think it's purely because they had Peltola, they had Cervania, they had Dozel. They've had their center backs. They've had their central defensive midfielders out there playing center back. And he's not been willing to sit either one of those players. He's been kind of cycling him through over these past few games. And so when you're subbing him in, that's where he's going to want to do it. He also says found the problem, and he posts a picture of Dave Casper. I don't think Dave Casper is the problem here. If anything, I think maybe you give some credit to Dave Casper, because I don't think the other teams know where to get Ty Baribo. I don't know if they know how to maneuver to get Nathan Ordaz, to get some of these other players that have played pretty well. I think you can give, Kirikawa, Hefty, No. I think those have all been kind of maybe by the more international side of the market. But
Ordaz is an interesting case here. Do we think this is a player identified by Dave Casper and sold to ownership as a move they needed to make, and he isn't necessarily a player that was wanted by Renée, and that would possibly explain his lack of utilization and it's saying that he was not fit? Like that would correspond logically if it was a player that because all he talks about, right? He talks about like I'm cooking with the ingredients that I got and it's not good enough. And then they go out and they spend $2 million on a player who was good enough at LAFC, a team that's better than us. And he's like, no, not good enough. And also not in shape, and he'll play sometime. Like you gotta start him against LAFC, right? Like that, if he doesn't start against that game, like what is happening?
Yeah.
I'm just curious. That would make some logical sense, because what we're seeing, I mean, I would say every fan that has seen Ordaz is like, I feel like that guy should play some more minutes. In a team that's sort of bereft of attacking ideas, he should be out there, right?
Yeah. You would think. Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm still wait and see as far as that goes. We have seen with new players coming in, with the exceptions of the guys that clearly, Renée Weiler knows. Like No's out there starting because Renée knows him and knows what he can bring. There does appear to be even with Louis Munteanu, there was a slow walk to get him into the door. Peltola took a minute. I think now he's kind of hopefully locked down his starting role after maybe there was some thought about maybe him not being there. I don't know. I think there's been, and then there's Hopkins too, which he apparently loves and still loves to throw out there. So I don't know. We'll see. I think if Ordaz doesn't get an uptick in minutes, heading into the end of the season, I think you're right to be concerned about kind of where he is and where he stands. So
a potentially Caden Clark type of a more expensive Caden Clark, where you're saying who wanted this guy, because it doesn't seem to be the coach. I don't really know. Speaking of players who we don't know necessarily how they were viewed, we can only see the fact they never played. Jacob Murrell is on his way to Scotland. I think it's great that this team actually was able to turn him into. I think there's a transfer fee involved. He's under contract for.
He had an option. He had two. I think the British media always screws up MLS contracts. They all say, "Oh, his contract is done after this year," and he has the option years are club held options. So if the club wants to sign him, they say, "Well, we got options on him, so pay a transfer fee because otherwise we'll exercise that option." We will. So a paid option. Good for him. I'm glad he's got an out route. It was tough selling to get into the roster. I think even with the bereft of attacking options, I think he had a couple good moments, but I think it's very clear that he was a good 2 to 3 years maybe to be a player. And I don't know if the team could afford to wait that long. If a team came in and wanted to offer a transfer fee for him, I would say, yeah, go ahead. Absolutely.
This player probably so far the biggest casualty of war in the no MLS Next Pro having thing. It's probably, if you do the postmortem on this, years down the road, you're going to say that this was a player that came in from Georgetown with a spark, with some wind
tools
behind him, and he went nowhere. He didn't get a chance to develop. And then when he wanted to get called on, it wasn't up to speed, or it wasn't. Sometimes he was a right wing for previous coaches. Sometimes he was a 9. He never really seemed to have a position. So maybe he wasn't a fit, but also we never really got to figure out what he could be and what he could do because of the lack of minutes for him. So
we'll see how he does in Scotland.
That's Falkirk is where he is now. So that is, some of our folks in Discord are familiar with that club and maybe have even seen games there. So good for him. Continuing the long run of DC United to Scotland. Harry Kitchen, hello. Do we want to take it beyond the paywall for the rest of the questions?
Well, let's. Do we want to talk about the playoff decision, the new playoff format?
Sure.
We want to talk about that on the live show. But by the way, we got Jolly Anthem says, when do we fire Renée and the doctor for the rebuild of the rebuild of the rebuild? That is a question I think we kind of answered. You got to wonder, my biggest hope in all of this, I understand these past 2 games are rough. At this point, I don't care if Renée was the right hire or the wrong hire. I don't want to be back here in the off season talking about a whole new front office. I mean, the owners have to at least live in some reality to understand. And I hope they understand this. If you fire Renée, if you fire Dr. Soga, what message are you sending to anybody else who has any other option for a job? It's like, turn this around in a year or you're fired. And unless someone is so desperate to get into MLS and to be a GM, and has the ego to think that they can actually accomplish that with this roster, without still some major help. And I will contend with Renee, like this roster still needs a lot of help. This roster is nowhere near high quality MLS roster. I don't know how many players are away from that. At least a couple. I think they're closer than they were to the start of the year, but I think they still need some help, to get there. But, the biggest thing I say is like, please, you know what's behind the door. You got two options. Either you keep Renee and you keep Dr. Sogut, or you fire both of them and you are right back where you were at the end of 2025. And it's like the cycle starts all over again. And I just hope that this is like, let's just see what happens. Even if it blows up 27, 28, most of the players you signed have already out of their contract. You're pretty much going to give a new GM a clean slate. And at least you show that they have some possibility.
He is actually only under contract through 27. So that means that's the sprint season, right?
Is he just through the sprint season?
Yeah. Renée Weiler is contracted through the 2027 season.
But was that before they made the change or before they announced the move of the schedule?
It was before they announced it, but I'm curious with that in mind. I guess we can find that out at some point. The largest financial commitment, but it's saying through 2027. Oh, I don't pay for Washington Post anymore, so I can't get the article.
I'm curious. So this was made July 16th, 2025. It would have been before the announcement for the season transfer, because that definitely happened like early. The calendar switch was announced like, late, January. So it was definitely before he did that. Yeah. So through the 2027. So probably is through, December. Which honestly, man, I mean, if the team is flying high in that first part of the 2027 season, then you can do it. If things are falling apart, then yeah, you're looking to, quote from Ali Mackay on that one too, which is kind
good
of
stuff.
Good,
I bet he wrote that one through gritted teeth.
Yeah, but there is, I would say, yeah, so through 2027. So that probably is through December. So it would be through the first fall part of the season. And then, you make a decision there, whether you keep him, whether you
imagine they fire him and Sogut in December and we have no general manager or manager in the middle of the season.
Well, they got plenty. They'll be alive pretty much to make the playoffs in that season, regardless of pretty much where they are, because, MLS is announcing a new change coming to the playoffs. Go look it up. We'll try to describe it. It is basically, 20 teams will make the playoffs. I think this isn't official, but it seems like it's trending in that direction.
This was a balloon they put out to see what people would do when they put it out. So it's out there.
Yeah. And we'll see if maybe they make adjustments. I think regardless, I think the 20 teams is going to stay. I will state the overall, if we removing how many teams get in, the overall format, I like to a certain extent. Giving the top 8 teams, basically, so if you don't know, it's basically top 8. If you're top 8, we're going to a single table next year. We're going to divisions. We're going to all that. Top 8 teams, I think that's like the whatever the division winners and then the next best teams or something like that. So
wild card.
Yeah. So but basically your top 8 teams will play, in sort of a first round. You lose that game. You basically go into a loser's bracket with other lower seeded teams. You're going to start with, was it the 20 through 16, I think. So 16 through 20 will play sort of the play-in round. Then they will face the next 4 teams up. That will be from 12 to 16, and then your losers. So if you are one of those teams that's in the bottom half of your roster, you have to win 3 games to get to the quarterfinals. Top half of the roster, you just have to win 1, and you have an extra chance. And then for the teams that are in kind of that middle pack in the playoffs, you have to win 2 games to make it to the quarterfinals. So then it's after you get to the quarterfinals, it's just 8-4-2, and you got your championship. I will state it at least that there is a incentive to try to make that top 8 because you get another chance if things go wrong. And I think that is to me, that is a criticism of the playoff format. Everybody loves the gush about the single elimination format. Yes, you got a home game, but let's not pretend there weren't some drawbacks. One of the big drawbacks was you had your top seeds had to wait like 3 weeks to play, because they had to play all these other games through. And that was a problem. So you had like literally scrimmages, guys trying to stay fit. And a lot of the teams that won the Supporter Shield lost in that first game. So it does give you a second chance opportunity to play. If you have one bad game, you can still make your run into the final. Like that aspect. I like that. If you are that lower seed, you have a much tougher path. Particularly also you're going to be on the road potentially, maybe with the exception of that first game. So like that in a certain sense. Obviously the 20 teams is the big thing. Somehow DC will still finish a point out in 27, 28. That's probably what's going to happen.
I think that this is a format they're doing for the sprint, and how that goes will determine if they stick with it or if they go back to it. I don't
think it's for the sprint. I think the idea is that it's going to be they haven't really figured out what they're doing for the sprint. This is just going to be maybe it will be for the sprint.
That would make more sense, right? Yeah, but if it's a half season, then the integrity of the season is largely unimportant. Who cares? Yeah. So I think you're safe to monkey around and do crazy stuff in the postseason with that, because already your statistics are not portable to other seasons. This is an anomaly. But if they're going to jump that and just be like, no, this is it from now on, we're doing this. Yeah, get on board or get out of the way. That's a super bold move for potentially new MLS. I guess maybe it's the time to do it. You're having a changeover at the top from a commissioner perspective. Get crazy with it. It's certainly, this is a league that struggles for attention. It's a league that struggles to sort of gain new attention outside of the already captured audience.
I think the reason they're doing 20 teams, and the reason there is because of the schedule shift and the fact that you're going to play a season from July to December, and you're going to have a majority of your games within that stretch. And then you're going to take a month break. Basically, you're not going to play until late February. And then you've got kind of a final sprint from late February, March, and then late April. So you're handicapped a little bit in that way, because if you have 16 teams make the playoffs, or you have a more competitive playoff, you're going to have teams that are going to come back in February that are going to be just completely out. There's no reason for them. There's no excitement to get behind except maybe another rebuild. You have 20 teams, you're very least going to have some of those teams where if they go make some moves in the winter and they get some players in, or they overhaul their roster, maybe they can put it together and they could get enough to make that last playoff spot. That's the big, and also, and I get it. This league struggles. This league's all about gate receipts. And part of those gate receipts is if you keep teams alive, otherwise you're going to have scenarios where teams are out of it, and it's just like they're just going through the motions in that final half, and that's not going to make it. I think that is a big driver behind the 20 team scenario, is when they get to that break, they want to at least have a team in January who might be last can say, well, we've gone out and we've signed, I don't know, think of that. We've signed Harry Kane. We've signed this big player, and we've made all these big splash signings that we've been waiting for, and we're going to make a real push to see if we can make the playoffs. And at the very least, if not, then we still got next season, but at least we have that carrot with the idea that we can make that type of run. So that's definitely what's pushing this 20 team thing. I don't think for the sprint, I think the sprint season is going to be, my prediction sprint season is going to be exactly the same. Because if you're out by the sprint season, it probably will be like the last couple games of the season, and then who cares? You're already thinking about the next season anyway. It would be disastrous for a team to be completely out of it by December, and then literally there's nothing to be excited about when they sort of kick back off in the spring and head in February. So I think that's what's certainly driving it. So I don't know. But overall, the format, are you a fan of it? Do you think it's a good idea?
I'm entirely indifferent to format. I think it's because we haven't been in the playoffs for so long. It's not affected me in any kind of way. So I have hard thoughts about it. I think anything you can do to try to steal some attention that you haven't gotten, I think is good. I think I don't think having a playoff system that takes a really long time to explain is necessarily a good thing, which this kind of requires, but screw it. MLS is the laboratory of democracy in soccer.
I think the biggest criticism you have from this is they're changing the format again. And that has been just a constant thing about the playoffs. It's like they are just trying to find a format that works. And I think the biggest thing they need to do, man, I think this format, if they stick with this for 10, 15 years, I think it'll be fine. I think it'll be this will be a great format. The question is, you could just never trust them just to stick with this format.
Yeah.
Because then they just go and they want to change it.
I think they also have a lot of space to play with because no one else really does. I mean, there are types of playoffs, but we're unique in the world in the way that we're no pro-rel with playoffs. It's not like everywhere else. So there's no comparator arm. They can't be like, well, they don't do it like that over there. MLS is entirely different. So the fact that the regular season was largely inconsequential in many ways. Most people don't care about Supporter Shield. So why not go all the way and with your playoff function really sort of codify that with letting 20 teams in?
Yeah,
sure.
I don't know. I wish it could be. I wish there was a scenario where you could not have so many teams and maybe it'd be a little more exciting. But so I understand the criticisms. I think this is the way they're looking at it. I think if the TV deals get better, I think you'll see them maybe start to pull back a little bit because they'll, it won't matter if attendances are bad. They've got, a TV deal that kind of makes up for it. That's why a lot of the other sports can get away with empty stadiums and everything like that, because they have a playoff format that works for them. So
I think relegation would be a nice compartment, a nice companion piece to the 20 team format. Like if almost every team makes the playoffs, like it should be a double booby prize if you don't make it. Like that is where relegation makes sense. Like, all right, we tried, we gave you every opportunity almost to get into this playoff structure, to get more games, to make more money, and you couldn't do it. We tried. We give you a 2/3 chance. You couldn't do it.
We'll see. This might just be all just to make these two questions. All right, guys, we're going to go a little bit. I think there were some good topics that we wanted to keep for the free show. Maybe we should have hid some stuff away, but I think there's stuff we want to talk about. We're going to go to the Patreon show.
This is a good ad. Join the Patreon, the $5 tier, where we talk about the stuff that we just did behind the paywall. Good ad. So sorry for Patreons. We'll get to your questions. We'll get to maybe some other deeper topics about the team. So stick around for that. I'm going to complain about the coach a little bit. So that's where we'll some more. So we'll do that there. So we'll do that there. All right, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're on the free show, we'll catch you next week. If you're on the Patreon show, stick around. Vamos.